Bob Kiss. Now, first of all, your name is very striking to me. You have given 51 years to your profession of photography, but I want to start with a little bit about, the origins. Tell me about your name. Such a powerful name.
My father came from a little town in Moravia called Sered, which is now part of the Slovak Republic. But Austro-Hungarian Empire, Hungary and Czechoslovakia, that whole area, the name Kiss is almost as common as Smith.
Tell me when you decided that it was going to be photography, because I know you had other interests.
What made me decide to go into fashion and celebrity photography was a trip with my girlfriend to St. Croix with the famous photographer George Barkington. And here I was looking toward a future, spending my life in a laboratory, and George Barkington was on a blanket in a loose bathing suit and terry cloth top, photographing beautiful women in bathing suits. And I was like, this is tough for a 21-year-old man. Laboratory, pretty girls in bathing suits. That took me about 30 seconds. And I moved over. I double majored, so I moved over and did more advertising and fine art photography.
Yeah. How has the evolution of photography and the digital age impacted how you approach your work?
I moved here in '93. I got my first work permit, then residency. And that's just about when things were switching over. So I didn't have the professional pressures of shooting fashion and advertising as I did before I moved here when the change came, so I could take my time and learn digital a bit more slowly, a bit better. It's a very strange thing. During my entire career, you made a picture, you exposed the film, and you didn't know if you had it until the film was processed. Now you go click and look on the back screen.
Yeah.
You enlarge, you look in, check the histogram to see if you've got your exposure right, keep shooting. In those days you had a Polaroid, and you would calibrate your film to the Polaroid so that when you shot a Polaroid and it looked this way, you knew the film would look that way. And just like as cinema directors do, still photographers did, you sweated until you saw your film. You never really relaxed. Nowadays, the immediate feedback is incredibly powerful when used properly. The problem, though, is that many people are so fascinated by the technology, and the technology is wonderful, that they are not paying as much attention to the aesthetics. When you had to get it right, you made sure you had it right.
Yeah.
The lighting, the makeup, the hair, everything. Nowadays, we'll fix it in post.
Do you feel like this digital era of photography has also caused many to think of themselves as photographers when they really may not be?
There are two ways of looking at it. One of them is the dilution of craft. The other way is the democratization of the medium. The reality is the vast majority of pictures ever made were snapshots.
Yeah.
And many of them were significant only to the photographer and his or her family.
So you get better quality snapshots, but
Absolutely.
the rudiments of photography are still critical.
What it comes to is technique. Combination of sensitivity, aesthetic sensitivity, and technique. You need to have a creative eye. You need to see the beauty or interest, or if you're a photojournalist, sometimes the horror, the war, whatever around you.
Yeah. With this particular show, Things Unseen into Things Known, you've basically covered 3 centuries as far as technology is concerned. So tell us a little more about that and what it's been like working it.
About 15 years ago, I noticed all these amazing looking dried objects all over the island in mid-March, when the island was dry as March and April. And then I looked closely at them and was fascinated by the aspects. When you get really in close, they become big, gigantic things, almost like monsters or Death Stars or black holes. So I started moving in extremely close, and because these dried objects are all this beige, chamois kind of color, I thought to myself, gosh, they look really beautiful as platinum palladium prints, which are the same color. So even though they're quote black and white monochrome prints, printing them in the platinum palladium, they look the way they look in real life.
Things we take for granted, something as common as a cane arrow.
Exactly. We look, but do we see? So
Yeah.
it's things unseen into things known.
Now, you've seen a lot in the 51 years in this profession, and it seems you have quite high standards. Have you had opportunities to teach that and share it with other Barbadian students?
I've taught both at community college and 1 year at UWI, and I've had an advanced photo workshop where I work with young professionals or advanced amateurs. One of the greatest joys of my life is sharing what I've been passionate about for over half a century. I mean, that's a little hard for me to admit when I say over half a century, but it is. Some of them, Joel Brooks is one who's a very fine young photographer, and he's teaching as well. He teaches beginning photography.
I think my encounter with Bob Kiss and that particular part of the BCC program, the photography segment, that was definitely a pivotal point. He dealt with us as if we were professionals, and he himself remained professional, and he gave us all that he had to give, which was far more than I think we could have handled at the time. But it was that about his presentation that got me interested, because he was an expert at what he was doing.
To me, I'm sharing what I love. If you don't share it, if he who is in it for himself winds up by himself. And by the time I retire, if the worst thing that's said about me is all of my students have gotten better than I am,
That's a good thing.
I think that's what a teacher says is the best legacy he or she could have.
Absolutely.